Welcome, everybody. This is Hugh Massie, the chairman and founder of DNA Behaviour International. And today I'm delighted to be hosting another identity conversation. And I have the great pleasure of having Stevie Ray McHugh with me. And Stevie Ray and I have got to know each other at quite a deep level this year. And Stevie Ray really guides people to meet their future self and start living their new you. And I know from the processes that he follows to help people do that firsthand, because I've gone through it all, and Stevie Ray's taking me to the next level in my work with dealing with money energy. And so I'm so grateful for that. But I think there's really a lot of treasure here to unpack for the world. So Stevie Ray, welcome.
Thank you.
And so Stevie Ray, why don't you just tell me a little bit about your life, career background that's got you on to the journey of where you're at today in helping people live their future self?
I have, I'm on my 8th career and really enjoying that. I have moved from what I would say was an early path in trying to meet my parents' expectations. So, college as an engineer, and then finding out that I really had a strong calling to move into what I'm going to call higher frequencies of awareness and spirit, and began meditating early on in my life, which has really changed me. It's opened me, helped me move and transform through these different periods of change and transformation in my life. So because I've gotten I spent 25 years working with corporate change, and that has been a powerful change for me.
Yeah.
As well as showing up, working with senior executive teams and their departments, and working towards helping them combine human development and personal development at the employee level into an expression of the mission for the company. And that's been really powerful, and it has brought me to becoming a coach for senior executives and entrepreneurs who own their own companies, and for people in transition. So I'd say I'm very practiced in transitioning from one identity to the next version of me, the new you, as you were saying. And in that, I really enjoy working with people to help them enter into that transition process and work through the fear, work through the desire to kind of get it over with, but to hang in there long enough to allow an identity shift to happen within them, and really to begin the process of renewal for themselves.
Yeah, because it can be very hard for some people to go and live the identity that they should be living, and to make that change and to embrace the self-awareness. It requires a lot of personal courage.
It sure does.
To do that.
And setting a very strong intention to see it through, through the challenges that come, even to accept the fact that one is in transition at all, and that's a good thing, as opposed to, oh no, my life is falling apart as I knew it, and going into a more downward spiral, as opposed to entering into the upward spiral of the opportunity of changing behavior by shifting awareness and shifting to one's purpose and calling. That doesn't have to be living your calling. Doesn't have to be in work, but the question I ask people is like, do you have this sense of calling? Who's calling you?
Yeah.
What is it? What is it that's already within you that is bringing this desire to evolve to the surface, and how do you support that? And so that's my role as a coach and a teacher and a leader, is to help people through those transitions, but to enter into them deeply enough so that they really come out the other side with a new perception of their life and a new relationship to their calling.
Because I think within all of us, that calling's inside of us for very deeply, and for a lot longer than we would ever care to know about. It's, I believe it's there from birth personally, but others might have a different view of that. But it's there very deep. And yes, we can be brought up with parents that have an expectation that you go into profession. I was taught when I was 12 by my mother, and rightly, I don't regret it, that you need a meal ticket. And I decided, okay, accounting and law, was an area to get into. In the end, I went down the accountancy path. I don't regret it, but and a lot of people saw me as that, and that was for a long time my identity. And when I then showed up as something different, it was certainly a shift. But there was something deep going on inside me that I was not fulfilled, certainly. And so and that sort of brings me to my question for you is, there was a pivotal moment there when you were the engineer, you're the trained engineer, and you've then moved across really to higher frequency work. I mean, some engineers understand sort of the term quantum physics these days is a term that gets used more, but it's out there in terms of we as humans are a lump of energy.
Yeah.
And so what was a pivotal moment that got you to, in a way, go to the other side of living, to deal with the higher frequency, one for yourself, but then for others? Was there some trigger? Because I think this is important for others to know, because some ways you feel this in your body. You just know that something's up, and you got to sort it out.
Mm-hmm. That moment of the realization of calling is what how I'd frame it. And that moment was, I was working in construction and building homes and building boats on Martha's Vineyard Island in Massachusetts, and very dissatisfied and very judgmental of myself also at the time, which adds another level of congestion and contraction. And I started reading Be Here Now by Baba Ram Dass back then. And I found myself in the woods calling, just alone, calling out loud for help.
Yeah.
And guidance to see myself through. And in that pure request, standing in the woods, arms raised, shouting it to the heavens through the leaves of the trees, I really felt an energy shift in myself.
Yeah.
And I didn't know how to characterize it at the time, but it became the search, the motivation for the search for my true self, because I realized I didn't know who I was at the time. And then, of course, over the next decades, moving from sort of construction work to becoming a psychotherapist.
Yeah.
That was the next step, because I needed to take it deeper for myself, and then to be able to reflect that back and work with others. And that sort of snowballed until I saw that a lot of the people who were coming to see me in my practice in Manhattan at the time were hating their jobs.
Yeah.
And looking
Yeah.
for a career change. I mean, this is before coaching was a thing, you know,
Yes. Yep.
in the early mid 80s. And for me, it was like, oh, there's something to be done here. And so with my business partner, Mitchell Ditkoff, we created a program called Get Into It, INTUIT. And it was a 2.5-day reboot yourself and move into your calling and follow your intuition, of course, in the doing of that. And so we started doing that as a public program. And, the enrollment process seemed really onerous to us. And so we decided to take it into the corporate level because we're seeing all this dissatisfaction with people feeling alienated in it. And so we started teaching team building, collaborative problem solving, and really building corporate creativity, which is not a contradiction in terms. It's like that level of, innovation became the topic. And then, of course, it was like, how do you do that with teams and entire companies? And that's when I started working with senior executives and coaching and building, really even not just doing strategy consulting, but building metrics that cascaded through the whole organization so everybody could be enrolled.
So in a way, you're still applying engineering principles to it in terms of measurement, because everything's got to be measured.
Yes.
But you're bringing your empathic insights, capabilities, and making them in a way real for people.
That
process.
And using language that was really acceptable. So not talking about spirit, talking about team spirit, or where do you get your best ideas, and how do you allow for an environment that allows for individual creativity and team creativity within a larger structure, all aimed correctly at the strategies that the company is pursuing. So that 25 years of that and time on the road, and I finally realized, I had then been neglecting my own development, my own self-development, and had a major breakthrough. I took a year off to process this download that was something I'd been actually requesting from decades before in the woods. It was setting that strong intention. So getting back to myself. You mentioned boot yourself, and also past and beginning this process of alignment. So in a corporation, you're aligning everyone on the signature strategies and helping everybody see how they contribute to the success of the overall organization. But in yourself, there's also many selves to align.
That's right. And when you're personally not aligned, whether you're the leader, a manager on the team, or just a team member, enormous stress comes.
And then so I began realigning my cells, my inner selves, which is a lot deeper. Psychosocial workout, and in being able to align allowed me to have more energy. And in having more energy, that allowed me to see from new perspective where I was in my own personal development and how I could best help others make those changes for themselves.
Because it's easy to, you can get excited by this path when you embrace it, and you dive head first in there and you do a lot of work with it. But it's also, I think, as you've said to me before, earlier in the year, it's easy to forget to nourish yourself. And
yes,
in a way, you've got to provide time, I think, to do this. But when you realize that that's a very good investment because everything else accelerates and you get the pinpointed clarity, that's a courage step 2 in its own right, to believe that, rather than just doing busy work and thinking you're going to succeed.
Right.
So yeah, but I like the term you just used a minute ago, psychosocial workout. I think that's quite. I think that's quite strong. You should remember that term more often, because it's very impactful and tangible.
Yes, and not to be missed. If you're really looking to experience joy and presence throughout the day, and when you think of, you mentioned dissatisfaction, that is of course a driver towards integrating ourselves and aligning our many selves on the higher perceptions, so that you're developing your own observer capacity.
Yeah,
and that capacity can change the perception of any experience in life. And what it does is it allows us to have a higher degree of compassion for ourselves, which then allows us to have more compassion and less judgment for others.
Because I think that's you've just unpacked one of the big mental health issues out there, I think, is that people are too judgmental of themselves, comparing themselves to others, not having enough love or compassion for themselves, that, fundamentally, we're all good people. Okay, everybody's got a flaw out there, or a struggle, or goes overboard on something, or occasionally hurts somebody. That's going to happen. But
yeah,
you've got to learn to find that compassion point for yourself. I don't know you would be able to do it for others if you can't for yourself. And I think that's something that's important, in all of this.
You could say that, my religion, in quotes, is compassion and kindness.
Yeah.
And that is innate, and also an intentionally learned and improved behavior set.
Well, why don't we take that as a jump off point, Stevie Ray? And
yes.
you kindly completed your DNA discovery process, and we've got your reports, and you're a relationship builder, and I think that's coming across quite clearly here. You and I are quite different, although I think some of our life path is actually quite parallel, from sort of being numbers to people oriented. But as a relationship builder, compassion and kindness is a big part of you. And so just tell me a little bit more about that, and also maybe bake into it your creativity, I think, which is important, and your desire to collaborate, because I think they're the other big parts of how you operate.
Yeah, definitely. And it's interesting that I would say in my earlier years that I was much more of an initiator, and I learned to be more relational as I did the self-alignment, where I'm, working with my inner teenager, as one way to frame it, sort of like working with the beliefs that came out of my family, working with the very, very strong intention I had to succeed in the material world, and then sort of succeeding to the detriment of my own personal continued psychosocial development, right?
Yeah.
So by psychosocial, I mean how I treat myself is how I treat others.
Yeah. Yeah.
How I judge how I perceive, how I deal with those internal conversations and externalize them in expression. And being able to have a higher, being able to achieve higher alignment is the way to improve that observer part of myself, such that then I can hopefully, in most relationships, conversations, hold that place of a deep appreciation for the other.
Yeah.
Love for other.
Yeah, I think that sort of goes back to, doesn't it, our sort of discussion before about being compassionate on yourself, being kind to yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, you are an empath, a very, in our DNA
Mm-hmm.
language, very patient,
Uh-huh.
and like to collaborate. And I think living as an initiator, which is the opposite of all that,
yeah,
would have been quite stressful for you day in, day out. I mean, it can
yes.
be done,
Yes.
but it's hard work. It's not, in a way, it's not you.
Yes, it took me some years to realize that, and that's okay. The real is just having the realization that I was more relationship oriented.
Yeah.
And then making the decision really to pursue that in a more deeply personal and interpersonal way. Those personal, interpersonal, transpersonal, and that's been the order of, I'm going to call it soul development or self development for me.
But you've got one big asset in there in being able to live and grow as a relational person, and that's your creativity.
Mm-hmm.
So just tell me a little bit about how your creativity comes out, because that's really that's a very strong trait for you.
Well, the embracing intuition, guidance, inner guidance, as I would frame it, is a key factor in that.
Yeah.
The human body and energy field is a perfect receiver. And by that, I'm talking about resonance. So if you have two grand pianos in a room and you hit middle C on one, that middle C key on the other will vibrate in resonance. And it's that that move toward moving towards a more relational stance is moving into resonance, which begins with aligning your own inner parts, conversations on that higher frequency of perception, that observer self, and then allowing that to expand outward and resonate like like that piano string.
Yeah.
With others, and whether it's groups or teams, which I've spent so many years and years creating aligned teams, and it's that piece of commitment to walking in joy, I guess is the way I would put it. It's like every time I put my foot down, I use that body and field experience to become more present, or each breath can serve, or simply setting that intention that we are in that space of I'm going to call it our higher self, our best self, and allowing that to create new neuronal patterns that then become our identity.
Right. Yeah. So that was, in a way, well, you've used different words, but it's sort of a way where my question was going to sit is, but by being creative, and then again, as a intuitive person, a good listener, which comes with a relationship builder style, you're able to connect the dots pretty quickly for a person.
Yeah.
To then ask them the right question, because you don't just tell people the answer, well, X, you're going to be X. That can happen because of your intuition and processes. But I think it's how you connect the dots to ask the person the right question at the right moment. And I can't see how you can do that if you're not creative to some level.
Right. So, creativity is actually owning your heritage as a creator.
Yeah.
And that's a big step. And the best way I've found to help people heal and align their inner selves and become more solidly present is to ask my observer, my higher self, how I can best serve them in this conversation, this moment.
Yeah.
And then following that. So it's a different process than just thinking things through, which that's the balancing to intuition.
Right.
And receiving guidance. But having, had this big download experience that allowed me to see more clearly from that higher observer perspective, just tuning into that throughout the day changes life. It changes the perception of what's happening. Things are not just happening to me, they're happening through me.
Yes. Yep.
And then it's like, well, am I actually creating my life experience? When things don't go right, did I create that? How did I do that? Or even if I can't buy into the fact that I'm creating my life as a creator, that I'm creating the experience of my life. How do I experience the experience of my life? And I can choose then to judge differently, to feel differently, to think differently, to be much more present with something that would be hard to digest. But that also creates new neuronal patterns, which is to me the root of recreating yourself. That then my behavior shift, and I have the opportunity to really be present with someone without getting Velcroed to their issues.
Right. So if you said, I ask you, okay, Stevie Ray, what's your identity? How do you want to be remembered in the world by many others, and you will be, and many more to come, I think.
Well, thanks.
So what's that sort of higher state of being for you that you're aspiring to every day? How would you word that? Because I've sort of been listening to, and I've been very caught by the creator of new neuronal pathways. Something that is sort of connective. It's scientific in its own way. It's engineering, quantum.
Yeah, it is.
Got a bit of everything in there.
It's even measurable.
Yes, measurable. That's important. But how do you feel about that? I mean, this is you. And again, you're the creator of your life experience, and I think that's a very important message for lots of people to take note of, so that they don't just live with life being done to them. They're creating their own life.
That's exactly right. I'm an inspirer and a healer.
Yeah,
and that begins within, so that I can express it without and be of service to help others enter into the inspiration of their higher self, and to heal their childhood wounds and the way in which their field leaks energy, and to become more whole, to experience that they're already whole and complete.
Just go and live that.
And live into it live into that self-creation, the expression of that, regardless of circumstance, regardless of career, regardless of what we find ourselves in, whatever dilemmas, you know, we encounter, so that there's a huge freedom, which is a very big thing for me. It's really important that I feel like I have choice. You know, if you only have one choice, well, that isn't freedom. If you have two, you have the opportunity to maybe make a third thing out of those two, that creatively speaking, right? Take elements of either one and combine them into something that's new and newer. But if you can get to 5 or more options and ways of being and behavior choices, rather than being driven by what my past identities have been, then it becomes the freedom of entering into the present moment and allowing the appropriate resonant energies to emerge.
Yeah, I think that if you can get to 3 choices, that's amazing. 5, perhaps, you know, is sort of almost at holy grail level, but I think it's important to strive there. And everybody, as you say, everybody's got it in there. It's a matter of going in and tapping it and
absolutely
bringing it to life. And
that's
and to accept, I think that journey itself, even though it might be a hard day or 2 in there, or month or 2 or year, is joyous, and look at it as that.
Absolutely, it is the journey into the new you, which, you know, it's a upward rising spiral, like you know, spiral dynamics would describe it, and that we've reached, say, a new level of awareness, and that becomes baked in as we get new neuronal patterns, and that not just in the brain, but through the entire organism of the body.
Yes.
And ground it. And then we go, but then there's, you know, that is, we have to let go of that identity in order to rise into the next one. And there's that big period of not knowing, that big period of transition, walking in the gray zone, as, you know, William Bridges talked about in his books. And then that gray zone is like a forge, you know, where we are annealing the steel of us and creating, you know, more flexibility, more strength, more ability to follow that inner calling and commit to that.
Yeah, I think that's probably a really good place to wrap up on for us today, Stevie Ray. This has been, you know, extremely insightful, and you've had a wonderful journey, and I just admire the courage and authenticity in it, and just hope that you can help people to many more people to, you know, find it within them to change their neuronal pathways and live a better life.
Well, thank you for that. That's really supportive, and I'm appreciating your work to make these kinds of conversations a reality, and to preserve them in such a way that they can become part of a guidance system for those who are interested in evolving in consciousness.
Absolutely. All right. Thank you, Stevie Ray.
Thank you so much.